Have you ever wondered why some days feel like you've lived them before? Like you're trapped in a scene you've already acted out? It's not your imagination, and it's not just déjà vu. The truth is, you're not living in a single reality. You're constantly moving through an ocean of infinite timelines, most of which you'll never consciously remember. But there's a reason for that. Because once you understand how consciousness truly works, the game changes. Forever. For centuries, this knowledge was guarded by ancient initiates and buried beneath layers of science they hoped you'd never understand. But now it's resurfacing. Quantum physics is beginning to confirm what mystics have whispered for millennia. You can choose to scroll away and let the illusion continue, or you can keep listening, and finally uncover the truth they never wanted you to see. You've been taught to believe in one world, one timeline, one version of you living a linear life from birth to death. But that belief, it's the greatest illusion of all. Because right now, as you hear these words, there are countless versions of you existing, choosing, evolving, in realities that diverge from yours by just a thought, a breath, a decision. And you're not a passenger in this journey, you're the navigator. Consciousness isn't something trapped in your skull. It's not the result of neurons firing in the dark. It is the very fabric that gives birth to the neurons, the brain, the stars, and the multiverse itself. You are not observing reality, you are collapsing it into form. Every time you focus your attention, you're selecting from a sea of infinite possibilities and dragging one version of reality into the now. This is not a metaphor. It's been proven again and again in the heart of quantum physics. The double-slit experiment wasn't just some abstract lab trick. It shattered everything we thought we knew about the nature of matter. A particle only becomes a particle when you look at it. Until then, it's just a wave of probability, a cloud of potential, existing in all states at once. You observe it and it chooses. No, you choose. Not with words, not with conscious decisions, but with presence, with awareness. And if that's true on the microscopic level, why would it stop there? Why wouldn't your entire life be subject to the same law? You've felt it. That strange knowing that things could have gone differently. That eerie sensation when you swear something was one way yesterday and now it's changed. The Mandela effect? Glitches in the matrix? You brush it off, everyone does. But your soul knows. These are the cracks in the narrative. Reminders that reality is not a fixed line, it's a living, breathing organism, shaped by you. This isn't just science, it's ancient knowledge. Older than the pyramids, older than language. The Egyptians spoke of the Ka and the Ba, twin aspects of the soul, one tied to the body, the other able to move freely through realms. The Vedas spoke of the Lokas, planes stacked atop each other like dimensions of light. The Buddha spoke of realms of form and formlessness, where beings incarnate based on frequency. Indigenous shamans speak of dreamtime, a space where all timelines converge and split. They weren't wrong. They were just speaking in a language that science is only now beginning to decode. You don't just live in reality, you weave it. Right now, somewhere in the web of timelines, there's a version of you who took that risk. Who said yes instead of no. Who forgave instead of holding on. Who believed in the unseen. And there's another version, who spiraled into doubt, who turned away from their purpose, who never woke up. These versions aren't fantasies. They are real as this one. You just haven't tuned into them yet. Because here's the secret they never taught you. Consciousness is non-local. It's not bound to space or time, or even to this version of your identity. It's like a beam of light moving through a prism. Each timeline, each self, each life is a ray refracted from the same source. You. And the version of reality you experience, that's the one your awareness lands on. That's it. That's the entire mechanism. You don't change the outside world, you shift which version of the world you're inside of. And when you shift your frequency, your thoughts, your beliefs, your expectations, You tune into a different channel. Same characters, different script. Same earth, different vibration. But here's where it gets even deeper. You're not shifting alone. Because in this field of consciousness, all things are entangled. Just like particles separated by light years that still mirror each other in perfect synchrony. Your reality mirrors your inner state. You are quantumly linked to the universe itself. When you change, everything changes. People react differently. Events reorganize. Coincidences stack up like breadcrumbs, leading you to the next version of your life. Have you ever noticed how one small shift, a decision to believe in yourself, to start meditating, to release an old pattern, suddenly cascades into a wave of changes? People leave, new ones appear, opportunities unfold like they were waiting for you. That's not luck. That's the field responding to your broadcast. Because here's the truth you were never supposed to know. This entire universe is listening to you. It's to your words, to your vibration. Every breath you take, every thought you repeat, every story you tell about who you are, all of it is a signal. And the field, what mystics call the Akasha, what physicists call the quantum vacuum, it responds instantly. It doesn't need time. It doesn't need logic. It just needs a clear signal. And most people, they're sending scrambled frequencies. Doubt mixed with hope, fear layered under dreams. But when you align, when your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs come into coherence, reality bends. You've seen glimpses of this already. The day you followed a gut instinct and avoided disaster. The time you thought of someone and they called. The moment you imagined something and it happened weeks later. These aren't flukes. They're flashes of your true power breaking through the cracks in your conditioning. Because the real question is not if you're creating reality, it's how consciously you're doing it. You've been given the power of the gods, and you using it to worry about bills, relive the past, and fear a future that hasn't even happened. But you don't have to. You can wake up. Right now, you can take control of the projector and stop blaming the screen. You can start asking, not what do I want, but what version of me already lives that life? And then become that frequency, embody that energy, think those thoughts, feel those emotions, and reality will follow, because it has no choice. Imagine a film reel, infinite in length, with billions of possible scenes. You're not watching that movie, you're inside it. And every time you shift your attention, every time you change your state of being, the reel jumps. The scenery morphs. The characters say something different. Maybe you don't notice the difference right away, maybe you call it coincidence, but deep down, something in you knows. You are not where you were before. You are always selecting timelines. The only difference between someone who feels lost and someone who feels aligned is that one of them is choosing by default while the other is choosing with intention. And the moment you become intentional, the universe responds like it's been waiting for you to wake up. It's not magic, it's mechanics, spiritual mechanics. Your awareness is like a cursor on a screen. Whatever it hovers over begins to activate. The thoughts you feed, the feelings you dwell in, the beliefs you refuse to question, these are all coordinates. You don't need to change the world. You only need to change which version of the world you're tuned into. This is why every major spiritual tradition, stripped of its rituals and rules, points back to the same truth. Reality is illusion. Not because it isn't happening, but because it's not fixed. The ancient rishis called it Maya. The Buddhists called it the dream of form. The Gnostics saw it as a layered hologram. And now, quantum physicists are starting to say the same. They're discovering that the universe behaves differently depending on whether or not it's being observed. That particles exist in multiple places at once until something conscious steps in and decides what's real. Sound familiar? It should. Because it's you. You are that deciding force. Every time you expect something, you energize that timeline. Every time you fear something, you feed it power. And every time you trust, really trust, in the unseen, in your ability to align with a different outcome, you start collapsing possibilities into form. You're not wishing. You're commanding reality to show up differently. And here's the wild part, it listens. It always has. The problem is, you've been taught to doubt it. You've been trained to look outside of yourself for proof, to wait for signs before you act, to need evidence before you believe. But that's backwards. Belief isn't the result of proof. It's the force that calls proof into being. By the time you see it, you've already tuned into it. You've already become it. Reality is always catching up to your consciousness. You want to shift timelines? Start here. Start by changing the story you tell about who you are. Not later. Not when circumstances improve. Right now. Say it. I am not a victim of reality. I am the creator of it. Say it again. Not as a wish, but as a recognition. Because the moment you say it with truth in your bones, everything begins to reorganize. The people in your life, the events that unfold, the opportunities that seem to come out of nowhere. They don't just happen. They reflect your new alignment. You might wonder how deep this goes. The answer is deeper than you've been allowed to imagine. Every thought you think, every word you speak, carries a vibrational signature. And that vibration ripples out, not metaphorically but literally, across a quantum sea of potentials. That's why the ancient mystics placed so much emphasis on sacred speech, mantras, chants, divine affirmations. They weren't just poetic. They were tools, frequency tools, because when your voice matches the vibration of your intention, the universe echoes back in kind. But there's more. Because you're not just shaping this timeline, you're connected to all of them. Every version of you in every parallel existence is part of one multidimensional field, which means you have access, right now, to their wisdom, to their courage, to their choices. You can close your eyes, breathe, and feel into the self that already overcame what you're struggling with, that already healed, that already stepped into purpose. You think it's imagination. It's not. It's communication, cross-dimensional communication with another you, one whose frequency you're ready to match. There are moments when you feel it, even if you don't have the words, a quiet knowing that you're meant for more. A sudden burst of inspiration that seems to come from nowhere. A flash of memory from a life you've never lived. A fear that doesn't make sense. A dream that feels more real than waking life. These are not random. They are bleed-throughs from parallel timelines. Echoes of the multiverse reminding you that you are far more than you've been told. You're not limited to this body, this name, this story. You are consciousness, infinite and aware, playing in a sea of probabilities. And now, the question is no longer, what will happen to me? The real question is, what version of me will I choose to become? You've already been doing it, every day, every time you shift your focus, every time you choose love instead of fear, every time you feel gratitude before the thing arrives. These are not soft skills, these are timeline selectors, precision tools for navigating the quantum ocean, and it gets even more powerful when you do it on purpose. So breathe, not just to survive, but to synchronize with your higher self, with the deeper knowing that's always been whispering underneath the noise. You don't need more information. You need more inner presence. That stillness, that silence beneath your thoughts, that's the access point. That's the gateway to the version of reality that's waiting for it. Because the truth is, it's not outside of you. It never was. The multiverse is not something out in space. It's not in a telescope. It's in your own field of awareness. It's layered right here, overlapping, vibrating, waiting to be stepped into. And the more you clear out the noise, the doubt, the fear, the guilt, the distractions, the more you start to feel it. That quiet hum beneath existence. That pull toward something truer. That resonance that tells you, this is the path. That's not imagination, that's guidance. That's your inner navigator, already locked into a reality more aligned, more awakened, more alive. You don't have to figure out how, you only have to feel the truth of it, align with it, embody it, because when you do, the shift begins. The shift doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't announce itself. It unfolds like a whisper, subtle, gentle, but unmistakable. You begin to notice the way people speak to you changes. Opportunities seem to drift your way without force. Synchronicities begin to line up like signposts from another realm, showing you that something deep within you has clicked into place. And it's not that reality is changing in some grand external spectacle. It's that you've entered a new layer of the field, a different vibrational landscape, where the old rules no longer apply, where the past no longer dictates the future, where everything becomes possible, not because the world has changed, but because you've changed. That's the real magic. You shift your frequency and the world shifts to meet you. You begin to realize that every emotion you feel is a doorway. Every moment of presence is a key. Fear contracts your reality. Love expands it. Judgment freezes your timeline. Acceptance accelerates it. Doubt locks you into loops. Trust unhooks you from the old scripts and opens up the map of infinite possibilities. Most people are walking through life reacting to the conditions of the timeline they're on, never realizing they can change timelines altogether. They pray for miracles, not knowing that miracles aren't interruptions in the natural order. They're the natural order, glimpsed from a higher dimension. And you have access to that dimension through your awareness. So many teachings have told you to master your thoughts, but it goes even deeper. It's about mastering your state, your baseline vibration. Because thoughts are just messengers. They follow the frequency you're tuned into. You don't fight them. You don't suppress them. You observe, you allow, you shift. And you raise your state, not through force, but through alignment. You start to access a reality where those lower thoughts can't survive. It's like tuning a radio dial. When you move to a higher station, the static disappears. The noise fades. And suddenly, you're receiving a whole new signal. Clear, pure, alive. That signal is always broadcasting. You just weren't tuned to it. But once you are, it feels like remembering something you never learned. A kind of homecoming. You begin to sense how reality responds to your intention, how time bends around purpose, how the world reflects your inner truth back to you in subtle and stunning ways. And then it hits you. You're not a being walking through time. You're time itself, folding in on itself, creating loops and leaps and shortcuts based on your frequency. You're not evolving through reality. Reality is evolving through you. You begin to let go of the need to control, to plan every outcome, because now you know intention is more powerful than control, intuition is more accurate than logic, and surrender, real surrender, is not giving up. It's merging with the intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and atoms with the same breath. That intelligence lives in you, as you. When you breathe with awareness, you synchronize with it. When you meditate, you touch it. When you speak truth, you channel it. When you align your actions with love, you become it. And that's when the multiverse begins to open. Not as a fantasy, not as science fiction, but as a felt experience. The moment you step into alignment, you feel the presence of the other yous, the parallel selves who made different choices, who lived different timelines, who faced different challenges. Some versions of you are lost in fear, some are warriors, some are awakened. And you're the one in the center, the conscious node with the power to access them all. You can draw wisdom from them, strength, confidence, healing. You're not separated, you're entangled. And every time you make a bold, heart-centered choice, every time you move beyond your conditioning, you're helping them evolve too. Because all timelines are connected. You're not just shifting for yourself, you're upgrading the entire web. And the more you do this, the more reality feels like a mirror, not a prison. It stops being something that happens to you and starts becoming something that responds to you. Like a lucid dream that listens to every thought and shapes itself in real time. This is why the ancients taught that awakening is a responsibility, not a gift, not a prize, a responsibility. Because once you realize you're shaping reality, you can no longer pretend to be powerless. You can no longer play the role of victim or the one who's waiting to be saved. You are the one. You are the architect. You are the dreamer who forgot they were dreaming, and the dream is only as limited as the dreamer believes it is. So stop asking for permission to live differently. Stop waiting for signs that it's time. The desire in your heart is the sign. The fact that you're hearing these words means the shift has already begun. The version of you that lives in truth, in freedom, in peace, already exists. You're not becoming it. You're aligning with it. Close your eyes right now and feel into that version, not with your mind, with your being. Who are they? How do they feel when they wake up in the morning? What do they know to be true? What do they no longer tolerate? What do they love, deeply, wildly, without condition? Now realize, none of that is outside of you. It is you, waiting for permission, waiting for presence, waiting for you to remember. And when you do, when you drop into that frequency and live from it, you don't just change your life, you shift the multiverse. You collapse old timelines, you call forward new ones. You alter the trajectory of everyone around you, not by force, but by field. Because frequency is contagious, and when one person wakes up, it sends ripples through every reality. You become a lighthouse in the fog, a signal that says, it's safe to rise, it's safe to evolve, it's safe to remember who you really are. And the world, it listens, because the truth is, the universe isn't out there somewhere, it's inside of you, it always has been. And every time you close your eyes and breathe with awareness, you're not escaping the world, you're accessing the deeper blueprint underneath it. That blueprint responds to one thing above all else: coherence. When your mind, your heart, and your actions line up with your soul, the code rewrites, reality shifts, and miracles become the new normal. You begin to understand why some people never see these shifts. It's not because the magic isn't happening. It's because they're still hypnotized by the noise, still believing they're small, still clinging to certainty, still mistaking the illusion for truth. But you're not most people. You're awakening. You're feeling the subtle current beneath the surface that says there's more. And that quiet inner knowing, that's not a fantasy. It's memory. Soul memory. Because on a deeper level, you've always known how reality works. You've just been conditioned to forget. From the moment you were born, you were taught limits. Taught to believe what your five senses reported was all there was. Taught to filter everything through logic and dismiss what couldn't be measured. But your senses are just instruments. They're not the truth. They're tuned to a very specific range, like a radio stuck on one frequency. You've never questioned what lies beyond that range because no one told you it was possible. But the mystics did, the yogis did, the shamans did. The quantum physicists are just beginning to catch up. They're discovering that space isn't empty, that particles communicate instantaneously across impossible distances, that time doesn't move in one direction, that the observer changes what is being observed. And they don't know why, but you do. Because you are not observing from outside the experiment, you're the one writing the experiment from within. You're not just a piece of reality. You are reality, temporarily experiencing itself through a single lens, a single name, a single life. And as soon as you stop identifying with the lens, you start seeing clearly. You realize you're not the body, you're the awareness that holds the body. You're not the thought, you're the presence in which the thought arises. You're not your past, your future, your story. You're the field that births a billion stories again and again across time and dimension. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're simply remembering, layer by layer, what you've always been. And with that remembering comes power, real power, the kind that doesn't need to force, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that simply is. You begin to live from presence, not panic, from purpose, not programming. You stop looking for validation in others because you can feel the alignment in your bones. Your worth no longer comes from being seen, but from seeing clearly. And with that clarity, the illusions begin to fall away. You start to see the systems for what they are, structures built to keep you asleep, reactive, afraid. You see how fear is the most efficient control mechanism ever devised, and you stop feeding it. You see how lack is an illusion, scarcity a lie, separation a trick of the lens. You stop identifying with struggle and begin to align with flow. Flow isn't passive. Flow is precision. It's knowing when to act and when to wait. It's trusting the timing of the field, not the clock on the wall. It's listening to the deep inner pull, the whisper that says, now, go here, speak this, let that go. You start navigating reality not through effort but through energy, through resonance, and when you do, something miraculous happens. You stop needing to chase what's already making its way to you, because you've changed your signature. And your signature is everything. It's the vibrational fingerprint that tells the multiverse which version of Earth you're aligned with. There isn't one Earth, there are infinite Earths. Infinite expressions of this moment, layered on top of one another like shimmering veils. The Earth where you're in survival. The Earth where you're thriving. The Earth where you're asleep, where you're awake. You don't move through them with your feet, you move through them with your frequency. And every time you choose differently, every time you pause and breathe instead of reacting, every time you align instead of control, you shift. Reality doesn't change because the world changes, it changes because you rise above the noise. And in that rising you start to access what the ancient traditions all pointed toward. The higher self, the true self, the one beyond all masks and identities, the part of you that never left source, never forgot the truth, never stopped holding the map. That self isn't something you become, it's what you already are once you strip away the layers that never belonged to you, the fears you inherited, the beliefs you absorbed, the labels you clung to for safety. Once those fall away, what's left is simple, radiant and powerful beyond words, pure consciousness, embodied, awake, sovereign, and in that sovereignty the question shifts. It's no longer, can I create my reality? The new question becomes, what kind of reality is worthy of who I truly am? Because when you know you're the architect, the standards change. You stop settling for timelines built on survival and start anchoring timelines built on soul. You stop chasing what the world says you need, and begin aligning with what your being already knows is true. You stop building castles on sand and start planting roots in the quantum soil of your own vibration. This is the real work. Not escaping your life, but transmuting it. Not bypassing the world, but reprogramming it from the inside out. You become the nexus point, the place where the divine meets the human, where the light meets the form. And through your embodiment, new pathways open, not just for you, but for others too. Because the moment you shift, you become a permission slip, a living demonstration that another way is possible. You stop talking about change and start becoming it. You stop needing people to understand and instead allow your life to be the transmission. A silent frequency that reminds others of something they didn't even know they forgot. This is why you're here. Not to conform, not to shrink, not to play a role that someone else wrote for you. You're here to rewrite the narrative from the inside out, to collapse the timelines of fear and open new ones made of love, clarity, and truth. You're here to remember that this isn't your only life, but it is a precious one, and the choices you make ripple across universes. Every aligned thought becomes a spark in the grid. Every act of presence shifts the vibration of the field. Every time you choose love over fear, clarity over chaos, trust over control, you are shifting more than your own life. You're shifting the collective. And it starts now, it starts with you. The moment you realize that, something shifts inside you. A quiet conviction begins to rise, not the kind born of ego or ambition, but something deeper, something ancient. You begin to feel it in your chest, in your breath, in the space between your thoughts, and knowing that you're no longer here to repeat cycles, you're here to break them, you're here to anchor something new, not by escaping the world, but by becoming more you than you've ever dared to be. You begin to walk differently, not because your body has changed, but because your frequency has. You move with a subtle power, a calm certainty. You're no longer rushing to prove your worth or defend your path. You just know. And that knowing radiates through every interaction, every decision, every word that leaves your mouth. You no longer seek validation because you've remembered where your truth actually comes from. It doesn't come from the crowd, it doesn't come from the rules, it doesn't come from the timelines of fear, division, or control. It comes from Source, and Source moves through you when you stop resisting your own expansion. Most people live their entire lives locked in a version of themselves that was never real to begin with, a mask layered over conditioning, fear, and the stories handed down to them. But that's not you anymore. You've outgrown the mask. You've outgrown the smallness. You've started to feel the space around your old life stretching, cracking, falling away. And you don't have to rush to fill that space. That space is sacred. That space is where your higher self breathes. So don't rush to go back to what was. Let the old fall. Let it collapse. Let it burn if it has to. Because what's emerging is something you've been calling forward for lifetimes. A reality that actually reflects your truth. A timeline that actually fits your frequency. And when it begins to arrive, don't question it. Don't minimize it. Receive it. Embody it. Allow it. You've done the work. You've shown up. You've cracked open the illusion and looked beyond the veil. That's not nothing. That's not small. That's the whole game. Because the moment you stop trying to be who the world wants you to be and start being who you actually are, everything shifts. Opportunities begin to match your vibration. People who speak your language show up. Pathways that once felt blocked start to open. Not because the universe suddenly started loving you, it's always loved you, but because you've finally stepped into alignment with the version of you that can receive it. You're not here to chase, you're here to allow. You're not here to struggle your way through another timeline of survival. You're here to consciously select the one where your soul can breathe. And the only thing that separates you from that version of your life is your willingness to believe that it already exists. Because it does. It always has. That version of you, confident, grounded, fulfilled, aligned, is not a fantasy, it's not a dream, it's real. And it's vibrating right next to this one, waiting for you to merge with it. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to wait for permission. You just have to become resonant with it. Speak its language. Feel its feelings. Walk like it's already true. Because when you do, the timeline collapses toward you like a wave, and suddenly you're living inside the very reality you once thought was out of reach. This is what they never taught you. Because if you knew this from the beginning, you'd be unstoppable. You wouldn't need the systems. You wouldn't follow the scripts. You wouldn't stay small just to be safe. You'd rise. You'd radiate. You'd remember that everything you've ever needed is already within you. You wouldn't play the game of limitation anymore. You'd create your own. And yes, it can be lonely sometimes, walking this path of awareness, of awakening, of remembering who you are. But that loneliness, it's not punishment. It's space. It's clearing. It's the sacred cocoon before rebirth. It's the silence before the symphony. And in that silence you begin to hear a new voice, one that doesn't come from fear or programming, one that comes from deep within, one that says, keep going, keep becoming, keep choosing the highest version of you even when it scares you. Because that's how you shift, not by forcing the world to change, but by becoming so deeply yourself that the world around you has no choice but to reflect it. You are more powerful than they ever told you, not because of what you can do, but because of what you are. You are presence. You are awareness. You are divine intelligence in human form, sculpting the shape of reality with every breath, every thought, every act of courage. And the more you remember this, the less you fall for the illusions of power, of control, of scarcity, of separation. You see through them, you move through them, and you become a living portal to something higher, something real, something eternal. You deflate it. You become a lighthouse, not by trying to save everyone, but by becoming so lit from within that others can't help but find their way. You don't preach, you don't push, you just are. And that being, that embodiment, is more transformational than any words ever could be. So if the world feels heavy right now, if the noise feels loud, if the old timelines are trying to pull you back, remember this: you are the shift. You are the new frequency. You are the proof that awakening is possible, and you don't need to wait for some perfect moment to step in. That moment is now. That doorway is open. That version of you is ready. So breathe. Ground into this moment. Feel the truth of these words, not just in your mind, but in your cells, in your heart, in your soul. And ask yourself, who am I becoming? What timeline am I choosing? What version of reality am I activating by how I think, speak, feel, and move through this day? Because once you ask that question with intention, you've already begun to answer it with your energy. And the multiverse is listening. There's a version of reality where you don't just understand this truth, you live it. A timeline where you wake up each morning already aligned, already connected, already pulsing with the knowing that everything in your life is responding to the clarity of your inner state. And it's not far away. It's not locked behind decades of spiritual practice or some mystical initiation. It's right here, pulsing beneath the surface, waiting for you to tune in. It doesn't demand perfection, it requires presence. You don't need to fix all your flaws or conquer all your fears. You only need to choose differently, again and again. Because each choice, no matter how small, is a steering wheel. Every time you choose peace over reactivity, compassion over judgment, courage over comfort, you adjust the signal, and the field rearranges itself around your new frequency. The change won't always come in fireworks. Sometimes it's subtle, a delay that turns out to be divine timing, a missed opportunity that makes space for something greater, a breakdown that reveals what was no longer true. And if you're not watching with the eyes of consciousness, you might miss it. You might label it wrong. But if you're listening, really listening, you'll recognize the intelligence behind it all. You'll feel the grace that moves beneath every disruption, the sacred order beneath the chaos. Because the universe is not random, it is exquisitely precise. It doesn't operate on luck, it operates on resonance. It doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your state. Your dominant emotional frequency is your point of attraction. That's not just a cute idea, it's a blueprint. It's why when you're aligned, things click, people call, doors open, and when you're not, everything feels uphill. Resistance isn't punishment, it's feedback. It's the field showing you that something in your internal broadcast is out of tune. And once you learn to read that feedback, you stop blaming, you stop fighting the current. You become attuned, you become graceful, you become powerful in a way the world can't explain, not because of what you've gained, but because of what you've let go of. The need to control, the need to force, the need to prove. You start to trust yourself deeply, without needing to know every detail. You trust the way your body tenses or softens in response to a decision. You trust the pull that leads you towards something unfamiliar but exciting. You trust the still, small voice that says, go left when the crowd is going right. And even if your mind doesn't always understand, your soul does. Because your soul isn't thinking, it's remembering. It remembers who you were before the programming, before the fear, before the masks. It remembers why you came here, what you came to shift, who you came to become. And every moment you spend aligned with that remembrance, every breath, every choice, every quiet act of integrity is an act of quantum navigation. That's the real secret. You're not stuck. You've just been repeating the same signal, expecting a different reflection. And the moment you shift the signal, the mirror changes, not gradually, instantly, not eventually, now. That version of you, the one who walks with ease, who speaks with clarity, who manifests with precision, is not a distant possibility. It's a present potential, and it becomes your reality the moment you decide that nothing is more important than your alignment. Not comfort, not approval, not even logic, because logic will try to keep you safe, but alignment will make you free, and freedom is your natural state. You didn't come here to follow someone else's path, you came to carve your own. You came to shatter the illusion of limitation, not just for you, but for everyone connected to your frequency, because when you rise, you don't rise alone. You lift the grid, you expand the field, you become a point of coherence in a chaotic world, and coherence is contagious. That's why your healing matters. That's why your peace matters. That's why your authenticity matters more than you've ever been told. Because every time you break a cycle, choose a higher thought, forgive what hurt you and speak your truth, you send a shockwave through the web of reality. A ripple that touches people you'll never meet. A vibration that echoes through timelines you don't even remember living. And that ripple comes back. It always comes back. Not as karma in the old sense of punishment and reward, but as resonance. What you put out becomes what you live inside. Not because the universe is judging you, but because it's echoing you. So echo wisely. Think with your heart. Speak from your soul. Move with intention, live as if you were crafting a masterpiece, because you are. This life, this body, this moment, it's your canvas, and you're the only one who can paint it. There's no right way to do this, no guru, no system, no perfect method. Just you, your presence, your truth, and your willingness to tune in again and again to what actually feels alive inside you. And sometimes that tuning means letting go. Letting go of identities that no longer serve you, letting go of relationships that dim your light, letting go of dreams that were built on fear, not alignment. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you evolved, and evolution is messy. It requires surrender. It requires death before rebirth. It requires faith when nothing makes sense. But on the other side of that surrender is something holy, something real. A life that matches your soul's signature, not your past, not your trauma, not your conditioning, your soul, the part of you that never forgot who you are. And when you live from that place, you stop surviving timelines and start sculpting them. You stop hoping things will change and start being the change that transforms everything. You stop looking for signs and start becoming the signal. That's when miracles become ordinary. Not because reality became magical, but because you finally started living from your magic. You've been magical your entire life, but no one taught you how to recognize it. They taught you how to calculate, how to conform, how to compete, but they didn't teach you how to feel your way into truth, how to follow energy instead of rules, how to bend timelines by becoming who you really are. That's the path you're on now, not the path of answers, but the path of remembering. And every step you take in that direction, something ancient within you exhales. Because this isn't new. This isn't some trend or some theory floating in a metaphysical corner of the internet. This is how reality works, how it's always worked. You're just finally waking up to your place in it. You're finally seeing that your consciousness isn't a passenger in this world. It's the compass, it's the map. It's the very force weaving this dream into form. And this dream isn't passive, it's reactive. Every thought you send, every emotion you embody, every belief you invest in, all of it is being read by the field. Not judged, but echoed. Not punished, but matched. The field doesn't have an opinion, it only has precision. It mirrors you perfectly. So if what's showing up doesn't feel like truth, don't beg for better. Become clearer, shift your signal. The reality you're in is not the result of your worth, it's the result of your vibration, and vibration can change instantly. You've seen this, you've felt it in those moments where something just clicked, where the decision felt so right it made the air around you shift, where you said no to something old and yes to something unfamiliar, and suddenly it was like the ground rearranged itself to meet your new frequency. That wasn't chance. That was mastery. You just didn't know you were doing it. But now you do. So the question becomes, what else are you ready to shift? What other parts of your life have been waiting for you to stop trying to fix them and start tuning into the version where they've already evolved? You don't have to drag the old versions with you. You don't need to rewrite the past, you only need to out-vibrate it. And that starts in your body, in your breath, in your nervous system, not in some distant cosmic realm, but here, where your feet touch the earth and your lungs bring spirit into form. You can think all the higher-level thoughts in the world, but if your body is still frozen in old safety patterns, if your energy is still anchored in fear or control, you'll keep looping the same timelines. That's why this isn't about bypassing, it's about embodiment. You want to shift dimensions? Then shift how you walk, shift how you breathe, shift how you speak to yourself in the quiet moments no one else hears. You're not trying to become worthy of a better reality. You already are. You're just training your vessel to hold the frequency of what's already true. And the more you do, the more natural it becomes, not because life got easier, but because you stopped abandoning yourself. You started staying. In your body, in your truth, in your center, and from that place, life starts to unfold differently. The chaos may still be there, but it no longer defines you. The triggers may still arise, but they no longer hook you. You become the calm in the storm. Not because you're resisting the world, but because you're finally aligned with the part of you that creates it. And when you're aligned, your intuition sharpens, your timing improves, your path clears. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped splitting your energy. You stopped saying yes to what felt off, just to be polite. You stopped dimming your truth to keep the peace. You stopped pretending you didn't know what you've always known. You honored your alignment, and the moment you did, the field responded. That's the law. That's the architecture behind manifestation. Not wishful thinking, not vision boards pasted over inner chaos. True creation happens when your inner world becomes so coherent, so stable, so attuned, that the outer world has no choice but to match it. It's not a game of luck. It's a science of resonance. And you are the instrument. So what are you vibrating with right now? Doubt, hope, gratitude, power? Whatever it is, it's shaping the next moment, not in the distant future. Now. Because time isn't what you've been told it is. It's not a line, it's a loop, a spiral, the fluid expression of where your consciousness currently resides. That's why healing can feel so non-linear, why sometimes one breath can change everything and other times it takes years. It's not about effort, it's about access. When you touch the version of yourself that already lives in peace, you collapse the distance between you and that reality. When you feel it as real, the multiverse realigns. And this isn't just a personal journey. You're not the only one shifting. The entire planet is moving through layers of awakening. Systems are shaking, illusions are crumbling, and yes, it can be disorienting. But what if that chaos isn't a problem? What if it's the necessary dismantling of an outdated frequency? What if everything that's falling apart is making space for something far more aligned? The new earth isn't something you wait for. It's something you anchor. With every choice, every boundary, every moment of truth-telling, every breath that says, I choose presence over programming, I choose embodiment over escape, I choose love, not as an idea, but as a frequency. And love, real love, isn't soft, it's not sentimental, it's electric, it's magnetic, it's the highest vibration in the universe, it's the language of source. And when you begin to live from that space, you become a living transmitter of it. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to prove anything. You just walk, and the field shifts around you. You speak, and timelines recalibrate. You are the shift. You are the bridge, you are the doorway between dimensions. And the more you believe that, the more real it becomes. Every thought you think, every intention you set, every emotion you hold, it's all data. Not to some judgmental God in the sky, but to the living quantum field that surrounds you, breathes with you, mirrors you. And when that field recognizes consistency, when it feels the rhythm of a soul no longer fragmented by fear or contradiction, it responds with precision. That's when the synchronicities begin to multiply. That's when your dreams stop feeling like fantasies and start becoming instructions. That's when life stops being something you survive and becomes something you conduct. You weren't born to struggle your way into enlightenment. You were born with the map already etched into your energy. You were born with a connection so profound, so intimate, that the universe has never once lost track of you, even when you lost track of yourself, even when you doubted your life, even when you forgot your name. But now, you're remembering, not with your intellect. With your entire being, you can feel it in the stillness between breaths, in the moments when time bends and something eternal breaks through the noise. That's not imagination. That's clarity. That's you brushing up against a version of yourself that has always known how this works. And in those moments, everything makes sense. The pain, the pressure, the path. None of it was wasted. It shaped you. It refined you. It brought you to this threshold where you no longer need to search for what you already are. And that realization, it's not the end, it's the beginning. The real beginning. Because now, you walk differently. Not to reach something, but to express something that's already whole within you. You begin to notice that people react to you in new ways. Some are drawn in, not because of what you say, but because of the energy you carry. Others pull away, not because they see something wrong in you, but because your clarity unsettles the illusions they're not ready to let go of. And you stop taking it personally. You stop dimming yourself to fit into timelines you've already outgrown. You stop apologizing for your light. You didn't come here to make others comfortable. You came to ignite, to awaken, to embody a frequency that reminds others what they forgot they were capable of. Not through preaching, not through convincing, but by existing in your truth so fully that it becomes undeniable. You don't need to fight the old paradigm. You simply have to stop feeding it. Stop vibrating at its level. Stop believing it's the only option. Because it's not. There are infinite options, infinite versions of you, infinite timelines already vibrating with the reality you've been trying to create, and the only thing keeping you from stepping into one of them is the belief that it's not already real. But it is. There's a version of you who doesn't shrink, who doesn't delay, who doesn't second-guess every intuitive nudge. That you already exists, that life is already unfolding, and every time you choose your higher knowing over your low programming, you take a step closer to that version. Until one day, you're not chasing that timeline anymore, you're living it. And the beauty of it is, the shift doesn't need to be dramatic. Sometimes it's as subtle as a breath, a pause, a decision to respond with love instead of fear, a quiet moment of self-honesty where you admit what's no longer aligned and choose to release it, not out of anger, but out of clarity, and in that moment the whole matrix begins to shift. Because the matrix isn't just an external system, it's an internal state of identification. It's the web of beliefs you've been entangled in, but once you stop feeding those beliefs, the web dissolves, and you're free. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped projecting your limitations onto it. This is the level of consciousness that no one can give you. No system can install it for you. No teacher can hand it to you. It's born in the stillness, in the fire, in the sacred moments where you stand face to face with your own truth and say yes. Yes to expansion. Yes to embodiment. Yes to the reality that only you can anchor. And when you say yes fully, when your energy, your actions, and your attention align, you become a signal too loud to ignore. the universe begins to rearrange around you not as a reward, but as a response. Because the quantum field doesn't operate on morality, it operates on resonance. It doesn't give you what you want, it reflects what you are. So if you want to live in a world of peace, become peace. If you want to see abundance, embody worthiness. If you want to experience love, dissolve the walls that keep it out. This isn't about forcing reality to change. It's about becoming the frequency that matches the reality you desire. And you'll know when you're in that state, not because everything is perfect, but because everything feels aligned. Your body relaxes, your thoughts slow down, your breath deepens, and suddenly the external chaos can swirl around you, but it doesn't enter you. You're anchored, rooted in something deeper, held by something real. That's the shift. Not into a fantasy, but into a clarity that cuts through illusion like light through shadow. You begin to see with different eyes, hear with different ears, move through the world as someone who remembers the truth in every step. And even when you forget, because you will forget, it doesn't matter, you'll come back faster. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you've tasted alignment and nothing else compares. The distractions lose their grip, the noise loses its power, you begin to feel your own vibration above everything else, and that becomes your compass. You don't need certainty, you just need congruence. You don't need guarantees, you just need coherence. And once those two are in place, once your internal world is aligned with your eternal self, the rest unfolds. Effortlessly, naturally, inevitably, not because you forced it, but because you remembered. Every time you remember, the illusion weakens. Every time you return to your center, the distortion loses power, and eventually those moments of remembrance begin to stretch. They link together like golden threads until your entire day becomes a living meditation, a moving prayer, a lucid dream where you are both the dreamer and the dream. And you stop asking for proof, because you become the proof. You become the evidence that a higher timeline is not just possible, it's tangible. And it's not something outside of you, it's made of you, constructed from the architecture of your consciousness, your beliefs, your willingness to expand. You begin to recognize your thoughts not as background noise, but as sacred instruments. You treat your emotions not as problems to be solved, but as guides. With messages wrapped in feeling, you no longer try to control everything. You begin to listen, to respond, to co-create in real time, because you finally trust the intelligence moving through you. You've never been disconnected, not from source, not from truth, not from your power. You've only been distracted, pulled into stories that were never yours, seduced by fear wrapped in the language of logic. But when the distractions fall silent, the knowing returns. And that knowing is clear. You are infinite. You are multidimensional. And the version of you watching this version is just one thread in a much greater tapestry. There are other threads, other lives, other expressions of you woven across timelines, dancing in parallel dimensions, dreaming different dreams. And they're not separate. They're you, fractals of your one great consciousness, all feeding into the same source of awareness, all accessible through intention, through presence, through frequency. Have you ever felt a surge of courage that came from nowhere? A sudden wave of wisdom during a moment of silence? That wasn't imagination. That was connection. A message from another thread of you, a version that had already moved through the challenge you're now facing, already expanded beyond it and sent back the signal, and you picked it up. There's the technology of consciousness. A divine wireless system operating beyond time and space, activated not by code, but by coherence. The more aligned you are with your essence, the clearer your signal becomes, and you're not just receiving, you're broadcasting. Every choice you make, every shift in awareness you embody, ripples outward and impacts other versions of yourself. And others are doing the same for you. You are not alone in this shift. You are part of a collective evolution, and it's not just happening on this earth. It's happening across dimensions, across incarnations, across every facet of your being. The awakening you feel inside, that quickening, that expansion, that undeniable pull, it's a multidimensional event, and you are the epicenter of it. And when you truly grasp this, everything becomes sacred. Your thoughts, your breath, your morning routine, the way you speak to yourself, the way you hold space for someone else's pain, the way you choose to create, even when no one is watching. These are not mundane, they are magic. They are the rituals through which you sculpt your frequency. And frequency shapes reality. It always has. That's why the ancient ones lived by vibration. That's why they spoke in chants, moved in rhythm, built temples that hummed with resonance. They understood what modern science is only now rediscovering, that all matter is sound, slowed down into form, that reality is music, and you are both the composer and the instrument. And the more in tune you become, the more beautifully life responds. Suddenly, resistance stops meaning failure. It becomes a signal, an invitation, a messenger pointing you back to what wants to be seen, felt, healed. You don't run from it, you thank it. You welcome it, you sit with it. Because you know, on the other side of resistance is power, on the other side of discomfort is liberation. On the other side of the fear you've been avoiding is the timeline you've been asking for. But you have to walk through it, not around it. Through it. And you will. Because you're not fragile, you're not weak. You're not broken. You are the edge of a wave that has been building for lifetimes, finally rising, finally remembering what it's here to do. You're not here to live someone else's version of a safe life. You're not here to sleepwalk through a script. You're here to create, to disrupt, to love, to embody a frequency so rare, so alive, that the entire field shifts when you walk into a room. That's what happens when you stop editing yourself to fit into illusions that were never built for your soul. You reclaim your voice, you reclaim your energy, you reclaim your timeline. And the best part is, you don't have to know how it's all going to unfold. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need a clear signal, an open heart, a willingness to say yes. Not just in theory, but in the way you live, the way you choose, the way you speak to the universe with your vibration. Yes, I remember. Yes, I accept. Yes, I am ready to live the timeline that's already pulsing beneath the surface of this one. The moment you say yes with your whole being, the shift accelerates. You begin to move through portals that don't look like portals, conversations, ideas, inner nudges, seemingly random moments of clarity. But they're not random. They're quantum choreography, the field responding to the new version of you that has taken the stage. And this version isn't tentative. It's not apologizing. It's not asking permission to rise. It knows that it's time. It knows that waiting isn't noble. It's delay. And delay is just fear dressed in logic. So no more waiting, no more shrinking, no more living in the shadow of your own potential. You are the shift, you are the signal, you are the doorway, and the timeline is already here. And once you step through that doorway, reality begins to bend. Not in defiance of laws, but in perfect alignment with them. The laws of energy, of vibration, of mirrored consciousness. You're not breaking the rules of the universe. You're finally playing by the real ones, the ones that have always been hidden in plain sight, encoded in every sacred text, whispered through every intuitive moment, pulsing quietly beneath the noise of a distracted world. Because this isn't about manifesting things. It's about realizing that you're the projector, not the projection, the consciousness behind the curtain, not just the character on the screen. And once you see that, the game ends. And a new one begins, one where you stop reacting to life and begin designing it with intention, with integrity, with reverence. And no, it won't always be easy. You'll still face the winds, the shadows, the echoes of old timelines trying to lure you back with familiar pain. But they won't hold the same weight. You'll see them for what they are, invitations to choose differently, opportunities to stay rooted in who you've become, even when the old world calls you to shrink. And you won't shrink. You'll breathe deeper. You'll walk taller. You'll speak slower, not because you're unsure, but because you know your words ripple through dimensions. You'll begin to live in devotion, not to an external God, not to a belief system, but to your own frequency, to your own soul, to the pure, undistorted signal of who you really are. That's where the power is. In alignment, in integrity, in knowing that every timeline responds to the smallest of your choices. The way you greet the morning, the way you touch your food, the way you speak when no one's listening, the way you choose to believe, again and again, that the life meant for you is not a fantasy, it's real, and it's reachable, not by striving, not by forcing, but by being. Because when you're truly being, the version of you that already lives that reality, you stop trying to get there. You realize you are there. You start seeing the world differently. The trees speak louder. Time moves differently. People show up in perfect timing with messages you didn't know you needed. You dream more vividly. You feel more deeply. And you know, even when you forget, that you are being carried by something bigger than logic. Something that moves with you, through you, as you. And that something is consciousness, the true creator, the root of all form, the breath of the cosmos echoing in your own chest. It's what ancient mystics tried to explain, what scientists are now beginning to observe, that everything is alive, and it's all responding to you. So what are you asking it to become? Not with your words, with your being, with your attention, with your emotion. You don't ask the universe with your mouth. You ask with your frequency, and the moment your frequency becomes a match for the timeline you've been dreaming of, it shows up, not as a surprise, as a certainty. That's how parallel realities work, not as fiction, not as theory, but as choices, lived, embodied, felt. And every time you choose from alignment, you activate a new path, a new earth, a new self. And it's all you, every version, every possibility, every story, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be lived. So, choose wisely. Choose boldly. Choose as if you already know the outcome, because in some version of the multiverse, you do. You've already succeeded. You've already healed. You've already remembered. You're just catching up to it now. And the more you remember, the more real it becomes. It doesn't require effort, it requires permission. And you're the only one who can give it. The only one who can look in the mirror and say, I choose to shift. I choose to elevate. I choose to live from the highest version of myself. Not tomorrow. Not when things feel safe. Now. Because the truth is, it's always now. There is no future. No past. Just this moment, layered with 1,000 possibilities, waiting for your signal, waiting for your decision, waiting for you to remember that this whole universe is alive and it's listening. It's not waiting to bless you, it's waiting to match you. So breathe, not just to fill your lungs, but to synchronize with the rhythm of all that is. Speak not just to be heard, but to shape the frequency of your field. Walk not to get somewhere, but to become someone. And when the fear rises, let it. Let it rise so it can leave. Let it shake so you can stabilize. Let it burn so you can rise. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are becoming. You are remembering. And you are already powerful beyond measure. This life, this one right here, is not a test. It's a portal, a classroom, a playground, a masterpiece in progress. And you hold the brush, you hold the key, you hold the frequency. So the only question left is, what timeline will you choose next?